So the last new pack dropped in Master Duel and you really want to be beating the meta. Here's some of the cards you might want to consider for your deck right now, as well as stuff you might want to be crafting. So let's start off with the hand traps. So right here, I have placed 5 hand traps. Now, of course, you could make it 6, and not every deck is able to run this, but these are some pretty lesser known ones, let's say, that are gonna be shining right now. Obviously, every deck is gonna try and run their Maxi and their Ash, of course, but these can be very impactful. First of all, we have Droll. Why is Droll so good? Basically, the Brave engine was just added to the game. And so when your opponent activates a Water Enchantress and banishes it to search for a Rite, and then you activate Droll, now their Fateful Adventure won't be able to add the Draco back or the Griffin. If that isn't completely clear, just wait, I'll be explaining all that. Beyond that, if your opponent opens with a Rite to get a Fateful and then normal summons to add a Draco back, if you Droll right there, once again, they're not getting their Griffin. And so basically there is a lot of choke points where drolling your opponent while they are playing the Brave engine completely shuts off that engine and potentially also the other cards in their deck. It's entirely possible that they are playing a Brave engine in a deck that still loses to Droll and then they just feel extra bad. Beyond that, this pack also introduced Fluanderies, and Droll really hurts Fluanderies. So essentially right now this pack introduced 2 things, right? Brave and Flu, and Droll tends to counter both of them. That's why this card is really good right now. However, one major issue is not many decks are able to fit the Droll in. Again, a lot of people are trying to play the Maxi and the Ash that's already 6 hand traps, and now are you going to be putting in a Droll that might not be that impactful in certain other matchups, you know, the fringe matchups, let's say. So that's a little bit of a toss-up you need to be considering. However, if you have the room, Droll is really gonna shine this format. Next, we have Ghost Ogre. Ghost Ogre is a bit of an easier fit if you ask me, and the reason is it is a level 3 and a tuner. This means that if your deck doesn't have room for Droll, it is very possible that it is a Brave deck, and at that point, it being a tuner already makes it a much better include because you can make Hauke Fibrax with it. And also, it's a level 3, so you can even combine this with the Griffin to make a Baron de Fleur. So that's why you will very often notice in all of these Brave types of decks, people are able to fit the Ogre and not the Droll. Even though Droll is still an amazing card, Ogre is just, you know, that slightly bit better purely because it's a level 3 tuner. Now, of course, if you have the room, both are really good options this format. Now, why is this as a hand trap so good this format? Once again, because of the Adventurer token, or Brave as it used to be called. Basically, when your opponent uses Rite of Eremacir and then gets a Fateful Adventure, if they then try to use the Fateful Adventure to add the Griffin or the Draco back, you can simply Ghost Ogre it, killing the Fateful and shutting off the search. This way, that entire engine is basically just a token, and it's pretty easy to deal with one token. However, let's say you draw it for turn. You draw it as your 6th card, you're going 2nd, so they already have their entire setup. Even then, Ghost Ogre is still very good, because when you do something, and your opponent then tries to negate it with a Griffin, you can still Ogre that Griffin. So no matter at what point in the game you get a Ghost Ogre, it is always going to be very impactful against the Brave or Adventurer engine. And since Adventure is so crazy that almost every deck is going to be playing it, Ogre is getting much better this particular format. Beyond that, it's also a Psychic, so if you have a deck that's already playing something like Emergency Teleport, this card gets even better on top of that. Again, that's why you will probably be seeing this more and more rather than the Droll, even though the Droll is still a super impactful hand trap this format. However, let's now get to the Boogeyman cards, and that is Water Enchantress and of course the entire Adventurer token package. If you're new to this, the way it's going to work is essentially you're going to be using Water Enchantress by banishing it to search a Rite of Eremacir. You're going to activate Rite of Eremacir, which creates a token and gets you a Fateful Adventure. You're going to normal summon something, the Fateful Adventure is going to activate and add the Draco back to your hand. Then you're going to activate the second effect of Fateful Adventure to search a Griffin. You're going to discard the Draco back. The Draco back is going to equip it to the token. After that, you special summon the Griffin, and now you essentially have 4,000 life points worth of attack on your board together within Omni Negate, and all of that with just one card. That one card can be either the Water Enchantress or the Rite of Eremacir by itself. This is why this whole engine is so insane, and while you'll be seeing it in a bunch of decks. Technically, you are playing some soft bricks, but those soft bricks, you know, like the Wandering Griffin and the Fateful, aren't that bad to draw. The only card in this engine that's actually bad to draw is the one Draco back, but this card is also really insane, so it's still worth worth running. It makes your Fateful Adventure search essentially free, and then it can also bounce something from your opponent back to hand when going second. So overall, incredible engine, and the way you're going to be running it is you're going to have 2 Water Enchantress, you're going to have 1 Wandering Griffin Rider, you're going to have 2 Rite of Eremacir, 1 Draco back, and 1 Fateful Adventure. If your deck doesn't rely on the activated effect of your normal summon, you can run it. And almost any deck can run it for that reason. Not Sword Soul, and not a few other ones, but most decks can, and it will make your deck better. There are a bunch of rogue decks that literally get better because of this engine and become, you know, almost viable, let's say, purely because of this engine. A lot of people hate on this engine, and I think the primary reason is actually that in the TCG it was so expensive that a lot of people don't have access to it. Once everyone has access to it, like in the game, I think it's actually going to be pretty fun. Now, one final little thing that you might want to include is a Foolish Burial. The reason is you can Foolish Burial the Water Enchantress to your graveyard and then banish it to search Rite of Eremacir. This makes it so you actually have 5 copies of whatever starts the Brave token rather than 4. As you see here, Water Enchantress and Rite are semi-limited, so you technically only have 4 ways to start the line of play, but with this, it's your 5th. And if your deck then also has, you know, something else to mill with that Foolish Burial, the card gets even better. So this is definitely something you want to be including when you're already playing this token engine. Now, one final little card that came out in this pack that I also want to highlight is Small World. Small World is an incredible card. It is basically a consistency buff for a bunch of decks. Now, I do need to say, not every deck wants to run this or needs to run this, but if you want to be able to search specific monsters in your deck and you don't mind going -1 to find them, this card is huge. There's also an argument for running this in these Brave pile, whatever decks you want to call them, because Small World can also search your Water Enchantress. You will notice a lot of people will be playing Rite of Eremacir and Wandering Griffin and all of that, you know, the whole engine in a deck with 60 cards, and so it becomes much harder to draw the engine then. By including Small World, which can basically search any monster, you suddenly are playing 8 copies of this engine inside your 60 card deck rather than the 5 we just spoke about. Now, you do need to know how Small World works. It is quite complex. If you read this effect, you're gonna notice. Reveal 1 monster in your hand, choose 1 monster from your deck that has exactly 1 of the same type, attribute, level, attack, or defense, and banish the revealed monster from your hand face down. Then add from the deck to your hand 1 monster that has exactly 1 of the same type, attribute, level, attack, or defense as a monster chosen from your deck, and banish the card chosen from the deck face down. There's basically 3 monsters, right? There's 1 in your hand that has all of these little things, and then you have another one that can only have 1 of those things the same as the one in your hand. You need to get rid of that one as well to then find the third one that once again only has 1 of those things in common with the one you sent away. So it's a very complex card, and you do need to figure out, like, hey, you know, Water Enchantress is a spellcaster, water level 3 with this and that, so you need to have another spellcaster in your deck that doesn't have anything of this in common with every other card and so forth. It gets a little bit complex, but there are websites, I will put them in the link in the description, that can show you which cards lead to which cards. So once you kind of know that about your deck, let's say you're playing a, I don't know, a Blue Eyes White Dragon deck or something, together with this engine, you will figure out pretty quickly, like, hey, actually, there's a lot of cards in my Blue Eyes deck that actually do lead to Water Enchantress with a Small World. The site will just show you which cards they are. Again, not every deck can play this, but it is a really, really powerful card that was kind of, you know, sneaked into the set, and not many people are talking about it. Now, currently, I'm not running it in my Phantom Knights deck, I'm not running it in my Prank Kids deck and so forth, but I am going to put it in my 60 card pile deck. So again, you kind of need to see, does my deck want to run this? But the answer might be yes. I can also see a future where Water Enchantress is limited to 1, and maybe Rite of Eremacir is as well. And at that point, you're really gonna need a Small World in order to find that 1 Water Enchantress copy to still get the whole engine off. Even though you go -1 to do it, some decks will still gladly do that. So is this an auto-include card? No, not necessarily. But again, don't forget that sometimes Konami likes to, you know, sneak a little card like that into a set. And while everyone is talking about Brave Token Flu, Brave Token Flu, Brave Token Flu, this card, you know, was added in, and it's a pretty impactful big one. We have seen some YCS topping deck lists running this to great effect. Also some high nationals placements and so forth. So, hope you found this interesting. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Ciao.